are back. Welcome to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga and wellness world and what we have been coaching our clients through. I'm Coach Terri, who I'm now a year older than I was the last time you guys saw me. I'm here with my good friend and coach Carol, and of course, our fearless leader, Josh. We have some interesting things to chat about today, and Josh wants to start us off by talking about fascia. And I'm just fascinated to know how Josh is going to relate fascia back to the how our businesses and the yoga and wellness world work. So, and if anybody can do it, Josh can. So take it away.
That wasn't where I was going to start, but I can definitely start us there.
Oh,
Terry, you look a year younger, my friends,
thank
than
you.
last time I saw you.
Thank you.
So
It's the new glasses.
I know they're nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Fresh hair, new glasses, year of maturity.
A year of maturity.
Yoga
Medicare.
ages you backwards.
Yes, Medicare. Yay!
That's the big checkbox.
That's the big
Oh my
checkbox.
gosh. Um, fascia, fascia and aging. No, we're not talking about fascia aging. There's some really interesting body science right now that I'm reading. I just find the whole conversation, I've always found it interesting, but like we're really in an ongoing moment of collision between ancient knowledge, philosophy from the past, cultural collision, and then like modern science and modern medical science, and in the world of AI, like the speed at which that's happening is increasing, and that's cool because I'm not sure we're discovering new things per se as much as like describing them and clarifying them so that they become something that's more valuable. But why does this matter for your business? I was saying before we jumped on that like, man, yoga studios, therapy practices, physical therapy, massage therapy, Pilates. Just the blunt way to say it is like we talk a lot of shit. We talk a lot of it's good for you this, it's good for you that. But if you really zoom out and listen to it in each one of these verticals, there's a lot of talking the same thing. Oh, stretching, flexibility, de-stressing is the big one right now. Oh, it's so good for like stress and anxiety and de-stressing and personal time. And then community is a conversation and like-minded people. Check yourself right now. How many times have you said in the last year, like-minded people in context of talking about your business? I bet you it's 1,000 times. It's a really fascinating thing. And so I think this matters in a few ways, but the big one from a coach perspective is that, not that long ago, Carol and I were at a couple of studios and we do a drill where we just ask, and Terry and I previously, we just ask the staff. We ask the front desk staff who's been there for 5 years, 10 years. We ask the manager of the studio. We ask the teacher of the class that we're literally going in to take their class. What makes this class good? Like, what's great about this vinyasa class? Why is this mat Pilates class good for me? And we either get nothing, like literally nothing, or we get it's good for de-stressing and like we don't even get workout anymore actually as the commentary. We get de-stressing, we might get some flexibility, but not really like in any depth of description for what that even means. If a vinyasa class, we get like, oh, breath synchronization, or like it's like you get to link your breath with your movements or whatever. Yeah, that is what we do. Who cares? Like, why does that matter? And so, if it's literally the source of information in your business around the product, and we don't have a compelling way to describe it, a compelling conversation around it, how the hell do you sell this thing? And to me, this is an indicator of some of the lack of buy-in that we experience in staffing in certain businesses where your own staff, they haven't totally drunk the Kool-Aid on the product because no one has served them the Kool-Aid.
Yes,
Good.
and they don't know what the product is, to your point.
They don't even know.
They don't
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
and I have been on any number, I'm sure Carol, you're the same way, number of calls, particularly with newer clients and even with longer term clients when they want to add a class to the schedule. right? Is I ask this question, so what is this class? And I get blank looks. And
It's a
oftentimes
cool sequencing
it's
that
a
I thought
cool,
would be fun to do that because,
but they
it's just
can't tell
something
me.
different that whatever.
And if they can't, and I said to him, if you cannot tell me right away within 30, in less 30 seconds or less what this class is for, then we have a problem. And oftentimes it's the same class. And I don't want to throw vinyasa under the bus but vinyasa is the wild, wild west. It's can be very
Yeah.
different depending on the who you've trained with, where YTT you went to, it's like very, very vinyasa flow can be, you could take 100 vinyasa flow classes and they're going to be 100 different versions.
Yeah.
Again, that's the nature of vinyasa flow. So I have one client that they had like a slow flow class, which I can get that. Okay, it's a slow, but then they had on their schedule a slow flow class.
Double slow flow.
Double slow flow. And I said, well, and the owner said, well, that's what the teacher wanted to call it.
Sounds like a bad birth control drug.
Yeah.
Like just like just
My other
terrible.
favorite one is slow yen.
How do you get slower than
That's
yin?
exactly what I said. And then it was like, well, that's what the teacher wanted to call it too. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
sometimes it's like what you're saying, a lot of what you're saying is they, meaning the collective they, owners, will succumb to pressure. And that's sometimes absolutely what it is. They will succumb to
sure.
pressure from a teacher that has this great idea and wants to put it on and brand it and call it this. And it's like exactly like every other class on the schedule. And that's where you get this, like, what the fuck? What is the product we're delivering?
Well, and so this lack of definition, and this is something that we work on with businesses, is product definition. It's not usually the first thing, but it might be the most powerful thing for a lot of businesses, especially if you've been going for a while. Typically what we see is it's like someone who's 10 years in ends up they've done all this other work all over the place and they're still struggling and you realize they've got a product problem. Not a product problem like that we would say your product isn't good and couldn't theoretically help someone, but like there's nothing compelling about it to really drive things forward, or it's too confusing or whatever. I digress. The point would be definition, specificity, there's the delivery of it, all of this stuff aside, from a brand standpoint, from a business standpoint, you could look at this through a marketing sales lens as well, which is, why would I come back to your business specifically for your flow class specifically? Like, what's the unique value of that? And if you haven't given me a reason, then maybe it's because Carol teaches an incredible IHP class and I like Carol, but that's how I end up following Carol around the city, not staying with your brand and on your membership. If Carol only teaches twice a week, I'm not buying your membership. I'm going to buy a 10 pack and go do something else at the same time. Versus product quality, technically, and development of that aside, it's the ability to start to be the source of information. In marketing in the past, there was a huge movement for quite a few years, which was just a reiteration of a movement before that or whatever, of be the news was what everyone was saying. Like be the source of information. That got misinterpreted in a lot of places as like be the news, literally like be the news about what's going on the planet sort of thing. I interpret that, staying with the theme of a yoga studio, as be the source of information for your student base and your staff around the specific lineage, practice, type, belief, philosophy of approach, etc. of your own product. If I, and here's your testing point, right? If I, as a student of yours, after not that long, 3 months, 6 months, can't find the words to accurately describe why I like coming to your class, then you haven't given them to me. Like it's like you literally haven't given me the ammunition. You haven't fed me the Kool-Aid, whatever analogy we want here. It's not that I don't like it. It's not that I'm not experiencing something, but I can't actually repeat it back out. So how do I evangelize you? Part two of the test is when you have the person who has been practicing with you for a long time, a student, And then they come in and they start telling your teachers about something about yoga or about the Pilates practice or about the system in the body or whatever else on something else they're reading adjacent to it. Now that's not a negative thing, that's positive. But there's like a tone that comes with it that I've seen over and over again where you realize this person isn't saying this because they think that this is a good place for the conversation and they want to hear your engagement around it. They're saying it because it's the contextual place for them to show that they know this stuff and they actually view their knowledge level the same as yours. That's the difference. And it might be in this case. And so this is a long-winded way of just saying, here's where we get to the fascia. It's fascinating to me that we're not continuing around the product to learn the nuances and to lean into what the benefits of it are, and then be the news, actually communicating that through. Start the conversation. The best example of this, whether you do it exactly or not, is the podcast. Like, if you own a yoga studio, how do you not have a yoga podcast? It's kind of silly if you think about it. Like, why wouldn't we just be talking about yoga? I'm not saying go start a yoga podcast actually, but it's just conceptually the idea. Start a conversation about yoga, specifically the yoga that you do and why it matters and how it affects things. And from a content standpoint, we've never had the problem in the service businesses, that we're coaching of lack of content of what to talk about. It's infinite. We've had a curation problem, and that's a big part of this. Fascia, if your body is a chemical system in part, that's the pop culture conversation right now, is the big one. Uh, and that's where, you're getting your peptides, your Ozempic, your whatever else is being like a huge part of the conversation. But your body is also electrical. That's the chakral system. And those worlds are starting to collide. Fascia was like a super popular conversation for a long time, still is, but like it had its sort of like primary focus for a minute. The new viewpoint that I'm reading that's really fascinating is that your fascia is actually, what's the word for it? It's a liquid crystal. It's the energetic communication system around the body, and it's piezoelectric. Piezoelectric is if you take a quartz crystal, for example, and you put it under pressure, it releases an electrical charge and you can measure it. That's the quartz in the quartz watch that you would have. That's literally why that's expensive to have that technology. And so think about it like you have a liquid crystal surrounding every single thing in your body, and through movement, it releases electricity to power things. Sounds a lot like the chakra system to me. Sounds a lot like Rolfing is releasing and getting pathways to move again. Like really fascinating. I was nerding on this and just thinking, I can't believe that like no one I how many studio owners and how many studios have we been in and how many classes have we taken collectively as a team? I haven't heard any person say anything actually interesting about anything in forever. And like in the class, it's not about being a lecturer, so that's not really the space for it. But I find it fascinating. Simple stuff. Simple, like, why is stretching good? If you own a yoga studio and your teachers cannot answer the question powerfully, why is stretching good? Like right now, to me, that's a problem. If your front desk sales team who's talking to people about spending $1,800 on an annual membership can't tell you why breath plus movement together in your flow class is good for them or what it does physiologically. They can't tell you anything about it at all. That seems like a problem to me. Not a big problem, not an immediate one, not an in your face, but like this little tiny compounding problem where you're not differentiated, you're not prepared to have an authoritative, positive conversation to hype people up.
Feel like where I see this a lot is like back in the day, we would talk in your Bikram yoga classes, you had moments where you could really just talk about what's happening in your body. And now I'll take like a vinyasa class and we're moving to, quickly or whatever. And so I at the end of class, and we would do this in our Bikram classes too, like you've done this, and this for your body today. Like, and so thinking of it in a way of like you're educating and marketing your class right then to the people in the class.
Hmm.
And instead, now I hear a lot of like, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your energy. Thank you, da, 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 which we are very grateful. That's not to say you aren't grateful, but there is a moment there that you could do something so much more powerful and have that conversation
Yeah.
with the people that are right there in front of you. Like, what did they just do? What did they just accomplish today? Like you're saying, like linking your breath with movement, like talk about that and like hype them up for the next time they come in. So that's where I see a lot of this lacking. And then I also, what was going through my mind while you were speaking, Josh, was like, and you, Terry, too, and people like they just take on the owners that just let the teacher name the class or do whatever idea the teacher wants. I feel like those are the owners that had a lack of confidence and direction in the first place with their studios. And so they don't really know who they're serving. Therefore, they don't have the words to market to the people that they want to serve. Like it all is wrapped up
Yeah.
in a lot of that. So like having a clear direction, a clear stance, a clear like these are the types of movements that I want to serve people with, and then going from there and having your teachers jump into that instead of like letting them decide is a huge, I think those are where the really successful owners come in. It's like they have a very clear path, direction, focus, and idea of what they want to do and serve.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Carol, that's where having that class experience document. So like in a vinyasa class, this is the type of vinyasa we're teaching. If it's power flow, it's this. If it's slow flow, it's this. Even down to like the type of music, right? And so that the music is matching the class and things like that. I just had a client out in California who, because came to the summit last year, plug for the summit. Its early bird discount is up on the 31st. If you want to save $500. She was looking at her numbers and vinyasa, she had vinyasa flow, blah, blah, blah. And so she decided to rebrand the classes. There's still a vinyasa based class, but she has two different, and one focuses on one set of things and the other focuses on the other set of things. And so, and then it has a very clear outline of what each of those two classes looks like. And lo and behold, we on our call a couple weeks ago, we're looking at, and those classes, the attendance has been growing, right? Because she's
Yeah.
very well defined what this class is. And now she and all her vinyasa teachers can say, in this class, this is what you get. This is what we're focusing on, right? And this is why this is important. And this is why it works with the other one. And this, so now she's really been doing the work to define what her core, what her products are. And I think that's often what's missed. And like you said, Josh, is like, it's just, you just throw something on the schedule with no thought, then, and no intention. And is it any wonder that classes aren't doing so well? And maybe back in the day you could do that, but let's face it, yoga particularly is so mainstream now, and there's so many yoga studios and there's so many yoga teacher trainings out there that you need to be differentiated in the market. You need to have something unique that makes people want to come back. I remember a couple of years ago, I was at a studio, mostly vinyasa. They have 3 locations. I took a shit ton of vinyasa, which people know I'm not a huge, it's no shade on vinyasa, but it's just not my favorite practice. Love the hardcore 90 minutes, 26 and 2. Anyway, I took a bunch of their signature flow class. It was their name, signature flow class. And I had a conversation with the owner later in the week, and I said, including I took one of her classes. Every single class was different. And this is
Mm.
what they train this is what they teach in their YTT. And I said to the owner, I said, were these supposed to be And she goes, yeah. I said, they weren't. You've got a problem. And she said, oh, I was kind of afraid of that. I said, they're all teaching it different. And I can tell you the one teacher who I thought taught it the best. And I said, no shade on you. And I told her straight up, because we're all about the hard truths, was this one teacher. And she was really surprised by that. I said, because it was clear. I knew exactly what I was doing. The instructions were really good. It made sense. The imagery she had made sense. It was grounded. And it turns out that she was primarily done in kids yoga.
Hmm. Yeah, right. Well, but Terry, what you're bringing into it too, it goes back to like fundamentally at the core level, and this is your point, Carol, without this definition of, and it's easy to interpret what we're saying here as the structure of the class, and it's got to be like this, and these like rules, and this very sort of like regimented way of looking at it. And it's not that that's not part of this, but I'm talking about on the core principle of like, man, and this has always been in yoga, but I'll relate this to some other things too. Two people are talking about Cobra, one of the most famous, known, everywhere in the fucking planet postures that's ever existed. And you can get wildly different instruction and completely different viewpoint of what you're supposed to do or not supposed to do, all the way down to like, I've been in a class where I've been corrected and told not to do something, like look all the way up and put my chin all the way up. And in the very next class, if you don't, they tell you to do that thing. And then, like, there's on the toes, off the toes, contracted thighs, soft, not. And like, there's a few legs apart together, the angle, do the heels touch or not? Like, it's just the minutia. So the hiccup here isn't, I'm not really debating what the right way to teach Cobra is. The hiccup here is that posture is going to be in all your yoga classes. Like it's very likely it's going to be in 95% of your yoga classes. If you've got three or four different teachers teaching it a completely different way without any reason, then you don't have a brand. Like, what is it? And so, or if you're purposely switching it up all the time, then lean into that, but have reason for it. A question that could be helpful on these sorts of things, on like the core belief around it, and this goes back to this description of like, be the source of information for your own product, is what for? So instead of why, ask what for with insert blank anything. We do this in coaching just in general in business, but it's a really good one for product dev. And then sorry to keep going here, but just to relate this to non-yoga business. I mean, this is obvious in other fitness, boutique fitness and wellness stuff or whatever. But when we look at massage therapy, would be a good example. When we look at physical therapy is a great example. Depending on where the physical therapist went to school, there will have a certain level of similar approach to things, but there is a unique methodology that you end up experiencing based off of the individual. And so if I own a physical therapy studio business and I have six therapists, but they all kind of do it their own way, then you end up with this same problem where I'll even talk about, and this is the most normal thing ever. Terry, have you ever been to physical therapy? Yep. Where did you go, or who did you go to?
I went to, I can't remember the name of it right now, but they specifically were dealing with like sports stuff. It was
Yep. Who did you go to?
I went to a local physical therapist who had gone to someplace here in Ohio, and
What was their name?
I can't remember. She was
Right.
really lovely.
Right. So maybe bad example here, but the tester that I was trying to prove out
Yeah,
was
what are you trying to prove
if
out?
you if you ask someone where do you go for physical therapy, it's either they're in network, so they go to, I don't know, this place that
Oh,
was
I
in
was out of
network or
network. It
whatever.
was it was out of
Right.
network. I can tell you that.
Or if it's out of network, it's highly like you might say, "Oh, I go to such and such sports therapy." Like you might say that, but it's way more likely you say, "I go see Carol. I go see Carol at whatever." Massage therapy is like this too. Oh, where do you get massage? You don't go like, oh, I go to Aspire Massage. That place is great. You say, I see Carol at Aspire Massage. She's my massage therapist. All of your attachment is to the individual. Where do you do yoga? Oh, I go to Nomad Yoga, but my favorite class is Terry's. Like I only go to Terry's class. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. It's just to highlight from a business standpoint. Part of why that is that if I see three of your physical therapists, I will get a different experience. And it's different enough that then you have forced me to choose my preference. But now, is physical therapy about your preference ultimately, or is it about helping you with your problem? And if it's about helping you with your problem, that doesn't even is a little bit incongruent. So we don't want to take out the preference. It's not that there's going to be any differentiation. It's just a long-winded way of kind of proving the point out and relating to these other businesses where that also means if Carol's my massage therapist and she leaves and goes somewhere else or starts her own practice, I'm fucking going with her. Of course I am after 2 or 3 years. Why would I stay with your business? If you're a physical therapist and you own an out of network practice and you've got six other therapists and you've got a book of clients, and then you all of a sudden are like, I want to take a vacation for 3 weeks. The ones that I'm talking to, two or three different practices have said the same thing. They're like, oh, like it's just tricky because I got to find a time where I warn my clients. I have to not take new clients. They're like, basically, I have to turn off my business, my book of business during this time because they don't want to see somebody else. That doesn't make any sense from a business standpoint. So all comes back to this core, like what for? We're doing it this way, or we have this formula, or we're going to be the news or the source of information. Like you've got to define that. Why? Because otherwise, you don't have any control. You don't have any leverage in your business.
No, yeah,
Schedule.
well, go ahead, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, no, you go first, Carol.
Well, this goes more, I think, well, in a way it could relate to these other businesses, but when you were talking about Cobra Pose and that five different teachers might teach it a different way, it also made me think how people want to feel like they understand how to operate and function in a business as well. Like they go in and they want to feel comfortable. So if I go into one class and I think because Josh taught my Cobra pose last time this way, and then Terry starts to teach it totally differently, like I might feel really weird about it too. Like so, and I mean, we talk about this with sales training where like if I'm supposed to be quiet in the room and then I start, I'm really loud or something. Like we need to know some of these rules, and I think it kind of goes into the classes as well, So it's for the sake of your client to feel comfortable and understand how they're supposed to move inside your business as well. So that's another reason, another reason to define the stuff, I'd say. That's what I was
That's
thinking.
the comfort part when we always talk about community and whatever else. If I don't know how to exist in your space, I'm going to feel like an outsider while I'm in your space. And so you can't entirely avoid that, but the faster you shorten that gap, that's these little simple things, even all the way down to how do I do this posture. Um,
And I
I've
think
definitely had it even myself where locally here, especially, there's been a couple times there'll be a teacher and the really weird thing that happens, and this is like a nuanced complaint for the yogis out there, but you'll get it when I say it, some of you, even if it's not your thing. It's like I'll do, and I've been practicing for decades at this point. I'll do a posture that they call, I'll follow their instruction. Then their instruction goes into some weird descriptive something. I don't really understand what they're talking about. So, like, I'll look around because I'm like, I want to do what we're supposed to be doing. And if I don't get it, then I'll do what I understand I'm supposed to be doing. Most yoga teachers don't correct. Like on average, lots do, but most yoga teachers don't correct. So you won't get any further instruction or correction on what I'm doing that isn't what they're telling me to do. I don't understand what they said to do. But then afterwards, you'll get like this weird, generalized, passive aggressive commentary on doing it correctly. And it makes me laugh out loud now every time. So, like, what? You got to tell us what to do. But I think that's funny. But if someone who was newer and already feeling uncomfortable goes through an experience like that, like, they're fucking never coming back. You've lost them forever with that studio.
Well, I had that experience in the studio. It was hysterical, just that. It was became this, and I became the naughty kid because the teacher pissed me off, and then I became naughty because I'm like,
Terry.
fuck you. I'm 60 plus years old, and you're gonna say, because they started the class with a vinyasa flow, and they were going so fast. And one of the reasons I struggle with vinyasa is because it's the up and down. My blood pressure is low as it is. I get super dizzy. And I have
Mhm.
passed out in yoga class before. I've passed out teaching. Hell, I passed out at the altar. But hey, I pass out. So I just slow down. I'm like, I'm not keeping up with this class because they're going too flippin' fast. It's inhale,
Yeah.
exhale, and then the teacher literally came right next to me and like, stay with the class, stay with the class, stay with the class. And that just made me slow down even further. And then there was,
Well, right, and that is a good sign of the teacher's attachment to performance, which
yeah,
isn't the point.
right.
Appropriate
And
alignment, whatever else, but
anyway, and then later in the class, I had to make a slight modification based on something I had gotten from a mentor teacher for a specific thing that I was dealing with, and then do it the right way, do it the right way. And I was just like, I don't know if this is on topic and I'm just venting here. It was just like, and I tell you,
we're into shit on that
yoga,
teaching land here.
yoga's from the horror stories from the yoga room. I, I'll never go back there. Never.
Well, Terry, what your story is bringing up though is what we're saying. What
Yeah.
for? And so
Yeah. There
if
was
you
like,
don't, if you're not the source of here's how we do it and why, and here's the benefit of that, and if your team isn't bought in on that, then this stuff is possible where that teacher you're describing, now maybe that's studio wide, I don't know, but like that's their attachment to the pacing, that's their attachment to you doing the posture the certain way, that's their whole system of not having a conversation before or afterwards to figure out what's going on, etc. It's all these things. And so as much as that's too bad that the teacher hasn't been mentored or instructed around how to deal with that situation, because that's clearly the case, also it's an indication like that's on the studio in my mind where you don't have you don't have that defined enough. If it's the MO of the studio where you're like you need to keep everyone together doing the same pace at all costs, I don't have to agree with that, but if that really is the thing, like okay, and then Terry's not going to go there because it's not for Terry then. Not even because Terry doesn't like that or because whatever. It's not for Terry. And then you have to accept that then. That okay, cool. Like this just isn't for you. But if that is
oh,
just happening on its own,
that's the problem.
that's where the actual problem is in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then it comes down to this whole yoga that, and we're going back to broadening it back out is when you're having all these different class styles, you're trying to be yoga for everybody. And you can't be yoga for everybody.
In
Everybody,
part, I
in
think,
part, we say that. It's like
yeah,
you're
absolutely.
everybody is welcome to come. We're not saying we're exclusive. We're saying we welcome anybody. Anybody can come try our yoga, but guess what? Our yoga classes are not for everybody because not everybody is going to like our yoga classes and how we teach. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And I think that's where when you start working with some newer clients, it's like they have like, why do you have 16 different class styles on the schedule? It's like, oh, well, this because of this. They're trying to appeal to everybody. And by appealing to everybody, you basically appeal to nobody. And this is why you end up with these little followings of a teacher, and also why your memberships aren't there because they're only taking a certain class from a certain teacher. It's not enough to warrant being on a membership.
Well, you're coming from, in part too, you could, like, I would propose that you're also coming from scarcity.
Yeah.
This is the same thing to sort of segue us to the next topic too, that like this is what happens when teacher says, I want to do this class and call it slow, slow,
So
slow, real slow, yin, flow, yang. You're like, cool, let's do that. It's the same, or you're like, I put a survey out and a bunch of people told me, let's run a class at 2:15 p.m. You're like, most people can't make it at 2:15 p.m. Like, do you,
three people
whatever.
want it, so let's put it on the schedule.
Let's put it on there. And then all three of those people never come to it ever. It's like literally losing you money. Or they do, but you need an average of 15 to break even anyways, and you whatever. So it's this idea that like we're the first people that are going to tell you to look at the metrics and try to create a more objective reality and use that to inform your decisions for your business. That's the first place we start with anyone that we work with. That's not the same as my teacher said, or my therapist said, or this other staff said, or this client said, or I put a survey out and people said that they like the idea of. So that's what's informing me. That's not using data. That's people pleasing. And so we see this a lot in scheduling. And that's been a conversation a lot recently, where the reason we have something on the schedule is because someone thought it was a good idea, or I love this one. Well, we have the class at that time because that's what time the teacher could teach it. You're like, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I get it, but like at some point that doesn't make sense. Or we keep this class on because the four people that do come to it sometimes have been with us for a long time and whatever else. Very next conversation, I've got a bunch of clients who are underpaying because they've been with us for a long time and I want to raise their price. You're like, anyways, we create all this narrative and tension around things, but it's not actually based on real data. Scheduling. How do you get your schedule right? I think this matters. Let me say this to kick us off too. Scheduling matters in every business that's service based way more than you think. If you're thinking I'm more like on the appointment side of things in my therapist practice or whatever else, or in massage therapy, or I've got these bookings and I need to be flexible because whatever. No, like you have to figure out your inventory and your schedule is a component of that equally as powerful. And if you don't get that right, it makes it hard. Scheduling is a huge component, and it's the one thing that you can't get it perfect. I mean, you can't get anything perfect, but it'll be very obvious. Someone will fucking hate what you do with your scheduling, always. Period, full stop. You'll never get all of it right. You'll never have nobody that complains or gripes about it whatsoever. And if you change it, it really upsets the balance of things. It's not saying that you can't change it. You should change it if you need to, but it's like you don't want to screw around with it too much. So you kind of want to put the effort into the depth of the thinking through what we're doing with your schedule in general, because it matters.
Yeah, totally. In fact, I did a webinar, a presentation on, I called it part art, part science. Make your schedule work for you. I did that in our community earlier this month. And I talked specifically about what do you do with your schedule, whether you're brand new, are planning to open or have been open for a day, how do you change your schedule? And, just a couple of quick things and Carol, you had a client that you were like, about is, when you start, how do you know where to start? Well, you got to do some research, right? You got to look at a good one and maybe you don't start with that early AM class, that early, and whatever time that can be. And depending on your market, it can be anytime from 5 to 7 AM. But maybe you don't start with that. But a real prime slot is, what is school drop off in your area? So if school's drop off is like 8:50, you don't want to schedule class at 9 o'clock in the morning, because the caregivers, the parents, or whoever's dropping the kids off is not going to be able to make it to your school studio by 9 o'clock. I remember I taught at the studio where it was this common joke, the 9 a.m. because the person did not like to have classes starting on the half hour. I don't know why. They always joke, oh, our 9 o'clock class is actually 9:10. And that, to me, it was like I got hand slapped a couple of times because I would start at 9. I'm like, well, the people that are there on time, why are we holding the class for the, blah, blah, blah. So, find out those times. Find out what if people where people are people commuting in, where are they commuting in, what time are they, these are some things that you need to find out just in terms of some general research. Saturday and Sunday is always a good day. And sometimes it is part art, part science. Is if you're just starting out, sometimes you just got to do some research, put them on there and let it grow for a while and see. Like when I added a noon class, I actually started it out at 11:30 because that made more sense for me at the studio. But and then someone suggested, why don't you move it to noon? Because a fellow studio owner then, and you said, yeah, when I moved my 12 to 12:15, all of a sudden it was like that. So I moved my 11:30 to my 12, and it was boom, the class picked up real quickly, right? So sometimes you do have to make those small changes. And I'm not a big fan of surveys. I just went through this with yesterday with a client. She put out a survey to see do people want 5 or 6 o'clock. Guess what? They were equally split. So now she's got some classes starting at 5, some classes starting at 6. We did a deep dive. It's basically, and she's got to eliminate. I said, well, pick one, and so making it congruent. I'm a big fan of congruency, right? So that you can count on, hey, at my studio, there was a 9:30 a.m. class 7 days a week. There was a 4:30 class 6 days a week, every day but Saturday, right? So it's like, make it congruent. And it's easier to add classes than subtract classes. And a general rule of thumb is when you're like 80% full, 80% of the time, that's when you add classes, is typically a good general rule of thumb. And then also it's okay to make changes. Like this is a good time if you're making like summer changes and things like that. And the other comment, and before you guys chime in here, is don't make it a big deal. You don't need to make it a big deal. Just say, hey, new schedule. And then also, okay, I'm shutting up. Somebody else
Yeah,
chime in.
our 1 point Terry at a time, really
Oh, right.
blowing out the window on that
I just blew out the
rant.
window. I'm sorry.
It's
I'll
totally
shut up.
fine. You
I'll
just
shut
did a
up.
webinar on it. It's all fresh in your mind, it's all good. No, and part of this, everything Terry said, yes. And some of what prompted this is, I was kind of questioning, and I have my thoughts on it, but can you even have a successful class-based business if you have 0 weekday morning classes? I'm kind of like, I really think that there's a real opportunity. Those are sometimes, I mean, for sure, I saw that in my yoga studio, is that can be a bread and butter population of, parents, caregivers that like that's their window of time, the window of opportunity to come and get a class in 9:30 or 9:15, whatever it is. And like Terry says, you need to research that. So that's sort of what prompted this conversation a bit. Retirees too. Yep. People that, yeah, exactly. Um, the other thing is, and I know the reason that we dislike surveys is people say that they want one thing, or they see themselves as being the person that would take a 2 p.m. yoga class on a Tuesday. But we know it to be true that they just don't do it. I remember what was funny to me, and this happened with a client recently. So it came up, but we cut a class, and of course, there are some of the people that had a real big issue with it. And one of the people that had an issue with our change wrote this whole long email about, but that class is the one that I just love, and I come all the time. And I literally put it back in her face and looked at like, in the last 6 months, you've been to that class like 5 times. Like I can't. You think that you come to this class. I had to tell you, no, you don't. And I didn't feel bad about it. I'm just not so this is where, I know we get really, we want to please our clients, and you're also a business owner. And sometimes if it's got to go, it's got to go. And I think there's a bit of that 80/20 rule too. Like if it's 3 or 4 people out of your entire population, like let them be pissed. It's better off for you in the long run. So
Yeah,
anyway.
you can simply, the client that I was working with yesterday is going to make that's a major change in schedule. I said, Tell the teachers what to say. That's the other thing is if you are making changes, give the teachers and the front desk something to, if people do complain about it. And it's very simple. Hey, look, we had to make some tough choices based on data. We're sorry. And, if they're threatening to cancel their member or whatever, oh, and we're going to miss you. That's it. That's all you have to say. I mean, and then they can decide, like to your point, Carol, um, people think they come all the time to a certain, and when you really look at it, they don't. So, and that kind of goes to not running your business from a position of fear. And that's a lot when it comes to things like schedule and pricing, two things that people absolutely get fearful about.
This is where our 3% complaint rate rule comes from. If it's 3% or less of the group that you're doing the change around, good customer service, hear them out, et cetera, smooth it over, and don't worry about it. If it's over 5%, start paying attention. If you get over, 10, or if you ever hit 20%, that's a huge flag. Like, actually, there's a problem then. But sometimes you just need a little guideline like that. You get the squeaky wheel gets the grease. 2 or 3 people complaining, but you're like, okay, of the people who have taken this class in the last year, how many is that? It's 100 different people who regularly take this class. 2 have complained. That's 2%. Just ignore it. Don't even, just move on with your life. I wanted to go back to the survey comment for a second because I'm with both of you guys. Like, people just straight lie on surveys. I'm not a huge fan of them either. I think that they don't give us the information that we want. Now, there is a use case for them. It doesn't mean you never do them. But if you are going to do a survey, you have to ask the right question. Like, the verbiage and everything has to be very thought out. And usually, you don't want to make it sort of interview style where it's too open-ended. The example being survey that you guys were talking about, do you want a 5 p.m. class or a 6 p.m. class? If that's the wording, you're going to get what Carol's talking about. You're going to get the preferential time that I think I'm going to come to or that I want, not actually what I'm going to do. And so the same question might sound like, is it possible? Like, can you regularly come to a 5 p.m. class or a 6 p.m. class, or it doesn't matter, I can come to both? And those are the 3 options. Because I don't care what your preference is. I care, is one of these going to make it not possible for you to get here? And you'll get a different result. You might still get it split down the middle and still be like, screw it, we just can't make everyone happy. Figure it out for yourself, sort of thing. But if you are going to do surveys, you've got to be very specific about what's the outcome you're trying to achieve and then word it around that. The other thing that we've sort of alluded to here that I think is not explicitly said enough, especially once you're operating in a business, is why are we asking what a good time is to do something instead of telling people when we have a time? That's supply and demand 101. It's like you phone the restaurant for the reservation. Can I have a reservation on Tuesday? No, we're full. But you can on Wednesday at 8 p.m. or 8:45. Which one do you want? So you pick 8:45 on Wednesday and you figure it out. Like, you bend to what's available. That's the extreme, of course, but that's a little more the ethos of approach. We have a class at this time because it makes sense culturally for Terri, to your point. That's when people can get here. Promote and sell that. Like, do that first. Pump the shit out of the fact that you've got a 9:30 in the morning class 5 days a week. Carol, to your point of like, can you have a service-based business without that? I can or can't, I don't know. But if you're going to have it because that makes sense logically, then have you promoted the heck out of it? Like, is it not performing because people really can't get there or really don't like it? Or is it that it's not really a thought for people?
In my IHP training, I remember it was something along the lines of like, if the class is compelling enough, people will make their way to it. Like, it doesn't matter the time.
Yes.
They're going to get there however they can.
That's the follow the teacher. Like notice the incongruency in your own studio, in your own business and thoughts. Like, oh, like I really don't like Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Carol's my favorite teacher. Carol starts teaching Tuesdays at 5 p.m. and somehow I fucking show up Tuesdays at 5 p.m. How did that happen? Like I rearranged my life because it's a priority because I'm compelled to get there and do this thing. We see that all the time. We're only focused on the smaller group of displeasured whatever. Um, There is one thing that we do, and this is a little bit, I'm going to call it advanced because I can't come up with a better word right now. So if you're a newer studio or if you haven't optimized your schedule for cost, if you haven't optimized your schedule for local cultural movement, if you haven't optimized your schedule for sales flow, and if you don't know what I'm talking about right now, that means you haven't. Okay. So if you haven't done those things, this is probably not that valuable to you yet. The other thing that we do is it's not a survey, it's like an audit. And it's not just necessarily the numbers of what's happening in the class, although, yes, it's who specifically, characteristically, is practicing that class. It's very difficult to look at your class schedule and say, well, we had 1,000 unique individuals come into the business this month. This Vinyasa flow class is full and this yin class is empty. And so how do we get more of the people of the 1,000 people in there? But then what you really want to look at is we had 42 unique individuals this month take the yin class only. That's the market for the yin class. And we had 956 take the flow class. And not that there's not going to be any crossover, but then the 42 who took the yin, who are they on average? Who is that avatar? Because it's not the same as your average on the other class. And until you can get that information super dialed, it can be hard to discern what exactly you should do with the class time slot. If you're wondering why your 9:30 in the morning class isn't performing, this has happened at a studio that I'm working with right now. It's because the assumption from the past is that that's the drop the kids off at school and go do your workout time slot. And for whatever reason, it's shifted. Their average client in the time slot now is actually the 25-year-old before work in the afternoon, get your workout in. And so suddenly, like the one hot Pilates class they have has just exploded at this time. And their other classes that used to be full all the time have tanked. If we do the client profile of the time slot, that's what shook out. And so just the market shifted. And now that time slot, from that perspective, that would tell us like it's just the wrong class type at that time slot because the person who's practicing at time slot has changed. Now it's an after school. The slot that used to perform then does really well at 5:30 p.m. in that same studio. Why? I don't know. But that's what's happening. Like that's where the people have moved. Mic drop. Schedule.
Hard,
Just chuck some shit on there and sell it.
hard art, hard science.
Yeah. There's one thing that we said a moment ago that or insinuated a moment ago around this sort of end us off for today. It's this, what are signs of self-sabotage? The schedule is a good example of how we see owners end up here in business. Because one of the signs of self-sabotage is rumination. It's overthinking. The schedule is a good example where it's like you just go in a circle. We could this, but then if soon as you start having this conversation, you're going to do it a little bit. I get it. I do it too. But if you get stuck here, you know you've got a problem and you're self-sabotaging. As soon as you get to the place where you're like, well, yeah, we could, but then Carol wouldn't like that. But like if we change this time, then some of those people couldn't come. And I would like to do this, but then that teacher wouldn't hear. And then like I don't know about that. Like it would feel good to this, but then as soon as you start like making all these excuses and thinking and going in a big huge circle over and over and over and over around the thing, you've lost it. It's gotten too cloudy. So rumination is number one. Number two is procrastination. Well, I'm just going to not decide then. This class is literally losing me money and has been for 6 months. And every time I run it, I'm just like burning $100. I don't know. We'll take a look at it later. I want to increase my prices because I haven't in 8 years and I'm barely, paying myself. Yeah, but it might hurt somebody's feelings. So I will do it next quarter, sort of thing. Um, then the last two are hypersensitivity. Terri didn't show up for work today. I'm like, oh, she must hate me. Like, what's Terry's problem? Whatever. It's maybe a bad example. That's too. Terri gave me a sideways eye. Hypersensitivity, and then the big one that ties all this conversation today together, I think, is self-negotiation. If you have clarity on this is my business and my brand and my product and the times and why we do this, that, and the other thing, and then through whatever influence, this, that, or the other thing, you start negotiating with yourself around why it can be this or that or changing, or then you kill your own confidence. Signs of self-sabotage. Rumination, procrastination, hypersensitivity, self-negotiation.
Or any or all of those.
If one's there, the other ones are there.
Yeah.
That's the annoying part.
And the other there, the analysis by paralysis. That's the classic.
Yeah.
I got to study this more. That it's like, yeah, Carol, it's like,
Yeah.
I got to look at this data more. I got to get this. And that is actually a form of procrastination. Is like,
Yep.
oh, I can't make this decision until I do this, this, and this. I just get so far down in the weeds. And sometimes in business, you have to take that leap. You just have to say, this is the best information I have. I feel confident and strong about this. I believe in this. And I'm just going to launch it and go. And then I can adjust down the road. Done is better than perfect.
We talk often about, like, this is the ruminating part, that thinking only breeds more thinking. At a point, in the
Yeah.
beginning, it's smart and wise to use your intelligence and experience and your data and to research and to like collect information to gain clarity about something. That's just smart. And there's no rule for how long that is. But usually people start that without any definition of what are the criteria where I'll have enough information to make a decision. And then so the shift becomes analysis paralysis. You've got all the information. There is no new information that's lacking for you to collect or that you can collect. And then we say, I'm just going to think about it more.
Procrastination.
That's where now you're in rumination and procrastination. And on our calls that we have for momentum calls, momentum audits with studios, and they're asking us at the end, like, okay, well, how do you guys work? Like, how does their coaching programming work and stuff? And we explain it to them, and then we're kind of talking about it at the end, and they're like, hey, I want to think about it. One of the challenge questions that we propose is, cool, like, what do you need to think about? Because I'm the source of all the information about what we do. And so you can think about it, of course, but what are we thinking about? Like, it's a weird thing that we do to escape a conversation sometimes. But the point of that just being, thinking only breeds more thinking. We believe if I think more and longer and harder about something, how do you think harder, by the way? That's always an interesting one, right? We think more and harder about something, that I'm going to gain more clarity. And the reverse is what happens. The more you think about it, the less clear you become because the mind is fuckety like that. And so it doesn't mean you shouldn't think about things, but rather the self-awareness piece is knowing where you're actually sabotaging yourself, because the only thing that's going to get you what you're looking for, the only clarifier is action. Like, you have to do something. You have to just make any decision. Even if it's the wrong one, you'll know. That's valuable. Oh, should have done that. Okay, cool. Change it.
Yeah. Okay. I know Carol's got to jump in a couple of minutes, so I think that's a good wrap for today.
Wrap her up.
wrap her up. All right, we're wrapping it up. I gotta pull up our outro. Well, that's a wrap for this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen to see what's happening in the yoga and wellness world and just hear us sort of like shoot the shit every week and find out what stupid stuff Terry's going to talk about because you never know. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much. And again, if you're listening to this and you're not in our community, reach out. We'd love to have you in our community. You can watch the webinar I did on uh, Carol's. You've got one coming up. What you did one on websites, building a great landing page. I've got one coming up on what am I doing in? Oh, class descriptions. Yeah, I've got one coming up on class descriptions. And what making it so that a class description sells. So lots of good stuff happening. Summit happening. Yeah. So if you're not in our community, reach out. We'd love to have you in it. Okay. Bye.